Good evening, and once again, welcome to the Shadow Gallery. I am, as always, your host, James Donnelly. And it's Monday night, so you know what time that is. It means it's time for New Comics Bitches! So welcome. I finally was able to wrangle some of the fun things, well, one of the fun things, two of the fun things actually, out of my local comic shops, my buddies there. They had a booth at the Phoenix Comic Con. They were able to get me an autographed photo of Chief Tyrrell, or Aaron Douglas, as his real name is, from Battlestar Galactica. So I thought that was kind of cool. And they were also able to get me, and I don't have that with me because it's bagged upstairs, the Free Comic Book Day Star Wars Serenity comic. That they actually bought there for me, because they said that they would have it for me, but they said that they just ran out or something to that effect, and they actually bought a copy there for me to give me for free, because that's how fucking cool Gotham City Comics and Coffee truly is. Anyway, so I was also able to get some issues of comics that came out in the last couple of weeks that I've been missing, because their ordering system still gets a little screwed up from time to time. So I'll be starting with those reviews of previous comics, and then we'll roll into this week's stuff. So starting off, we had Angel and Faith, number 10. Now this obviously, we are out of the previous arc and now into a new one. The previous arc being with all the craziness with Drusilla and the daddy issues arc, as it were. And now they arrive back. Angel and Faith arrive back at Giles's home to find his aunts, Lavinia and Sophronia, who basically look younger than Faith does. And the reason for that being is that they have, well, the Giles family is they're very magically inclined, and so that they've used their share of magic to keep themselves pretty much eternally young. And they've also sold their souls and their lives to these various demons, so on and so forth, in order to maintain young. And so it's literally like the most vain thing that anyone can think of. There was one, there's a great exchange in which one of the aunts basically says that she sold her soul to this particular demon so that it would keep cellulite away, and another one sold it for six-pack abs. And basically, the reason that they come to Angel, two reasons, well, maybe three, is first reason being that since Angel and Buffy destroyed the seed that basically allows magic to be in the world, they feel that Angel is responsible for their continued well-being and their continued life. So they bring basically all of these demons to their fucking doorstep, and it's a fun it's a fun battle to watch Angel and Faith take these demons out, and also having this kind of running color commentary by Lavinia and Sophronia. But we get a nice moment after those battles are done, when we see that we see Giles as a young boy, and basically his first real use of magic. There's even a hint there of that he should be called Ripper, which I thought was nice. And basically they give Angel a crystal because they've heard that they're looking to resurrect Giles by whatever means that they can in a world without magic, and especially of a man who did not die by magical means. He was not killed by magic, so therefore, that's been, of course, the thing all along with Giles and his resurrection. So they give him a crystal that houses Giles's kind of his soul as a child, if you will. It's like his essence of when he was young before he went off to the Watchers Academy. And this shard could help them in what they're going to do. But it seems that Lavinia and Sophronia have maybe different plans for this, because they seem to want Giles to come back, but they're looking to pit Angel and Faith against one another, depending upon how Giles is resurrected. So, and then, of course, at the very end, they get a surprise visit from, well, let's just say, one of the cast of Buffy, who actually made a surprise visit to Angel while this television program was on, at the very end of, I believe it was season 2. So, I'll go no further. But this, Christos Gage, again, just keeps right on the ball as far as Angel and Faith is concerned. This is a better comic to me, for the most part, than Buffy. And I think it's more because I was always kind of attracted to the idea of, I always actually preferred the show Angel over Buffy, but that's really neither here nor there. It's still, both of them are still great shows. They still stand up, and of course this issue has the added benefit of having art by Chris Samnee, and that is and it's gorgeous art, and it's a great read. It just really keeps everything moving along at a really good pace. And it's a very solid 4.5 out of 5. Great, terrific read. Rocketeer Adventures 2, number 3. So in this, we basically have 3 stories by David Lapham, Kyle Baker, and Matt Wagner. And then a bonus pinup by Eric Powell. And we basically get these 3 different stories. The first by Lapham is about a life that that Cliff and Betty could have together in this kind of country home. But both of them see that living this way would be selfish to one another. It's kind of what they have dreamed about. Having kids, settling down, getting her out of, the limelight of pictures, getting him out of kind of the adventuring business, but neither of them can do that to one another. It's a really lovely story, actually, from David Lapham, which is even weirder, because he's, gone so far to the other extreme with, his work on Crossed, which has, become such a terrible comic. At least when he's doing. I haven't read any of the recent Ennis stuff that he's done on Crossed, or Jamie Delano stuff, so I don't know. But then we have Kyle Baker's a very entertaining story, which is basically how their dog basically gets a prototype of the jetpack that Peavy has built. And what's particularly awesome about this bit is that it has a bit of a crossover with a certain favorite pulp character of mine. At least an implied visitation from none other than Lamont Cranston, aka Kent Allard, aka The Shadow, and that he intends to use Peavy's expertise and maybe even Cliff's, kind of adventuring persona for his own, for one of his missions, to maybe make them agents of the Shadow. Of course, like I said, this is all implied. None of it is said straight out. But Peavy has this line, this line where he says, I think this bastard is going to try and cloud my mind, and just stuff like that. And it's just, that was, aside from the the jetpack dog, it was a really awesome story, and to have that Easter egg of this other, very significant pulp adventurer, his appearance being essentially, like I said, implied in this story, is just, it's a huge bonus for me personally, and it's just, I think would be really cool for anybody who's a fan of the pulps. And then we have in Matt Wagner's story that he wrote, a glimpse of the future, basically, in which there people, it seems to be this classroom environment where they're recounting the adventures of Cliff Secord and and why why the Rocketeer did what he did. And it wasn't out of anything like glory. It was out of, it was out of a sense of justice, and out of a sense of goodness, and out of a sense of love. Not only for his country, but also, of course, for Betty. So it's a wonderful, again, another wonderful story in this trilogy. And at the very end, we basically see that this is set in the far future, and all of these young students, they're all wearing jetpacks. So it was just a very, very solid 5 out of 5. This would have been definitely one of my picks of the week, of last week, had I read it last week. So, but again, I mean, this is just, it's such a great comic, and I'm super fucking psyched for the Rocketeer miniseries that Mark Waid and Chris Samney are going to do. So that's coming out, that's starting soon, I think within the next couple of months. So I'm way ready to be on board for that. Justice League Unlimited #4. So this is, again, this is a just a printing of the digital series of not only Batman, Justice League Unlimited, Batman Beyond, and Superman Beyond. So basically, we have the JLU. They have to go to well, Terry has to use an older, like, prototype of what would become the Batman Beyond costume or suit, I should say. And they have to go to New Genesis to discover the mystery of whatever it is that kind of lies beyond all of these, strange deaths. And they find that New Genesis has been destroyed. And his reason for its destruction seems to be a deal that was struck between the All-Father and between Darkseid to release the anti-life equation, which of course is, as you know, it's basically designed to to basically put everybody under control. So you find, people like Orion and Granny Goodness and Mr. Miracle and everybody like that, they're all teaming up against this common threat. but only New Genesis, or only Apocalypse, of course, survives. And then there's a little bit of a, cliffhanger at the end as to who exactly is in control of Apocalypse, because it's not Darkseid. And then we have the Batman Beyond story, which is basically Batman basically racing against time to try and help Mad Stan, who was voiced on the cartoon, I think, as I said before, by Henry Rollins. He's this very kind of anti-establishment, kind of like psycho bomber. So it was always fun to hear, Henry Rollins' voice come out of this character that is very like anti-establishment and very kind of, punk rock, if you will. But it's like the psychotic version of Henry Rollins. So, and all Mad Stan wants, he wants his dog back from these Russians, and so it finally is able to help him do that. It's a neat little story, but of course there's still the hunt for Dana's brother, because Dana's brother has brought some suffering indeed, and and looks to bring even further with the Jokers. And then we have Superman Beyond, which was the weakest of the stories, in my opinion, which is basically kind of it's Lex connecting from beyond the grave with his daughter. And she seems to be very much on board with the idea of killing Superman without really having any specific grudge against him, other than the fact that she's found out that she is, she's the daughter of Lex Luthor. So that was a little off, in my opinion, but still, a really, still, for the most part, a really solid read. Of course, having great art by people like Dustin Nguyen and Norm Breyfogle, who I always love to see his stuff. So just a really solid read, 4 out of 5, pretty easy. And this next one I'm going to be talking about 2 issues in a row, because the latest one came out this week, and the other one I'd been trying to get for a month, or my shop had been trying to get for a month, and I didn't want to buy it online. And that is Rachel Rising, numbers 7 and 8. So basically what we have in issue 7, for those of you who are not reading this book, do yourself a favor and try and find it. If you're really, just kind of getting sick and tired of the superheroes and everything like that, Terry Moore's book is just, it's a wonderfully bizarre, world. It's basically, I look at it as like if David Lynch sat down to write a comic book, this is kind of what it would be like. Because it's these bizarre mysteries that get even stranger. There's no answers for them. Basically, we have Jet, who died in a car accident in the last issue, is back to life, much in the same way that Rachel is. And we have Aunt Johnny is in the hospital, kind of recuperating from that accident. The little girl that was with him has disappeared, and dead bodies in the cemetery literally explode from their graves and collapse on the ground of the cemetery into a perfect pentagram. So that was basically that's a summary of issue 7. Obviously, it gets deeper into that. But then we have now issue 8. Which we have Dr. Siemens. He's trying to divine exactly why Rachel and Jet have come back from the dead. He refers to them as possibly being angels, because they're not zombies. So what could be the only other explanation? In his mind, he sees angels. But of course, this is also a man who is living with a dead body of his own. So there's a lot of mystery about him. And then we have this bizarre, the strange snake vomiting woman, again taking another victim. and we have this, this other character who is kind of commanding these wolves to drag this dead body out of the snow and actually kind of devour it. And Jet, we see her making a connection with Earl, who's another one of the, he's kind of like, an aide to the coroner, if you will. And Jet kind of dealing with the fact that her neck is completely broken, her spine is all out of whack from this accident. I mean, it's just, just kind of, it takes what you think you might know about the undead, if you will, and it gives it life. It gives them, each these, this kind of, these different problems and these things that they have to deal with now that they're dead. I mean, it's so wonderfully written. It's so wonderfully bizarre. Again, there are so many more. There's an almost infinite amount of questions with no answers yet, or very few answers. And it's just, it's so beautifully drawn. It's just, it's a wonderful break from, kind of the rut that we kind of get stuck in with the superhero comics. So a very solid 4.5 out of 5 to both issues 7 and 8 of Rachel Rising. Again, I really highly recommend that you pick it up because it is very, very strong work. So now we're going to get on to this week, and we're going to talk Marvel first. There's very little Marvel that I read this week, and none of it was particularly great. There's only one that I did find really good, but I'll get to that later. So we have Defenders number 6. Now, I've been a huge fan of this series since its inception. I've really liked it a lot. This issue is really its first misstep, because it seemed to be, because what we have here, we have the introduction of the Black Cat, not as a member of the Defenders, but she is now part of the plot. Is that basically we see her at the very beginning, she has been hired by this cabal of, an interested party, and they basically, they like these kind of science magic artifacts. And they hire the Black Cat to steal one, and it's more or less a test. And I should say they hire the Black Cat to steal a Satan Claw, which is one of the weapons that Baron Strucker used back when he was fighting, in the Second World War, and so on and so forth. And when she successfully steals that, and it's kind of, it does have a bit of charm there, as she's trying to escape. She's trying to figure out how exactly the Satan Claw works, so that she can, she leaps out of a window, and several floors to presumably might be her death. She can't get it working, and she actually starts giving some of like the old Konami video game codes, like up down, left right. That was kind of charming. But then we have more information, lot of exposition in this issue about John Amon, Prince of Orphans, and that he's been killing these some of the immortal weapons of from the Iron Fist universe, if you will, and basically kind of gives us a kind of a rundown on why he seems to be doing it, or they don't really know why he's doing it. But they also give a little bit of a rundown of Orson Randall and the Confederates of the Curious. I remember that annual, that Iron Fist annual that introduced Orson Randall and the Confederates of the Curious, and I think that was one of my that's one of my favorite comic books. I loved of that particular year. I think it was like 2007 or 2008. It's a great write-up. It's just a great title. And what they see is, in a picture of the Confederates of the Curious, they see another one of these these concordance engines, and they want to know more about it. They want to know why they would have had it, but Amon seems to be, the Prince of Orphans seems to be very, intent on preventing them. So they travel to, well, they want to go to Amon's home country, a place called Zagambo, and its neighbor country is Wakanda. And so, of course, they come before T'Challa, and they're looking to get more answers about the Prince of Orphans and people of Zagambo. And basically T'Challa says, well, there's nothing that we can really do to find out anything about these people, about this particular person especially, because these nations were at war for a very, very long time, Wakanda and Zagambo. So in order to find the answers that they're looking for, they have to kind of look inwards, and they all, except for Red She-Hulk, they all ingest this kind of spirit potion, basically like super trippy kind of stuff, and we finally find out the reason for why Black Cat was hired in the first place. She's hired to steal this this brass frog from Zagambo, which is where they believe it is. And of course, in the final moments of the issue, we see Prince of Orphans with holding this frog, this brass frog, and it just. My problem with it was that the whole kind of introduction of the Black Cat, the whole kind of introduction to the Black Cat working for these people seemed to be it was overlong, in my opinion, and then the rest of it seemed way too exposition heavy. It's still a decent read. It's about a 3.5 out of 5 for Defenders #6. Of course, the Dodsons bring some great art to bear, so that's always good fun to see. Avengers vs. X-Men #5. So basically, we have on the blue area of the moon, we have Emma, we have Cyclops, we have Colossus, we have Magic, and we have Namor fighting. Cap and Hawkeye and Wolverine, Red Hulk, Black Widow, and Tony and Hank Pym basically are working together to create this kind of Phoenix blasting suit, if you will. And they think they've done it. I think they've stopped it. Cyclops seems to be even more amped up than normal. And, because Hope does ask Wolverine to kill her because she truly does feel that she can't control the Phoenix Force anymore, and that it could just lead to more destruction. Of course, Cyclops is firmly convinced that Hope and Phoenix Force are supposed to be together to save the mutants, and what happens instead is that with this disruption of the Phoenix Force by Stark's suit, the Phoenix Force splits into 5 separate beings, and of course those 5 separate beings are the 5 X-Men that are on the moon. Well, the 5 X-Men that don't appear in other books. Well, I shouldn't say other books, because Namor is actually part of the Defenders, but it selects Emma, Cyclops, Namor, Colossus, and Magic. And so they're basically going to Earth for what reason we don't know yet. it might go a little bit towards the way of explaining why Cyclops is being such an adamant dick about everything, because he just seems to be so incredibly unreasonable when it comes to the Phoenix. And like I said, I mean, I can kind of see it from his perspective, but at the same time, he just seems to be way, way, way too far out. So, I mean, this, maybe that he has some kind of tie to the Phoenix Force that has somehow influenced him in some way, that might make a little bit more sense as to why all this shit is going down the way that it is. But if that doesn't turn out the case, which is not likely to, this is barely a 2 out of 5. It's so not worth it. Like I said, the only reason that I read it is because it's, I get the digital downloads for free. Uncanny X-Men number 13, another big disappointment, because of course it's a tie-in to AVX. So we've got this. Basically, this is particularly tied into Unit, and how Unit is. He tells the kids. Now, aside from Pixie and what looks like Mystique, I don't know if it actually is, who we do see, kind of more naked blue ass of, courtesy of Billy Tan, seems to be. He basically he's gathered these kids together, and he's telling them, because Hope basically left this note for them to say to ask Unit. Now, I don't know who these kids are, like I said, other than Pixie. I don't know who the rest of them are. And they tell this story about, this other planet with this other being that was tied to the Phoenix Force, blah, 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 blah. Ultimately, Danger breaks Unit out, because Danger is under Unit's control. And, Dr. Nemesis has been stung by one of Black Widow's neurotoxins, so he's acting all fucked up. Magneto and the injured Psylocke and Storm are all having a little confab and a drink together in the basement of Utopia, and they want to get to the moon to see what the hell's going on. So again, this is more, it's like, I don't understand who these characters are, who these kids are. It was never made clear in any previous issues, really, of this book, who these people are supposed to be. And since I'm not collecting, other than Wolverine and the X-Men, I don't get any other X title. So I didn't know what was going on. I didn't care. I am interested in finding out more about Unit, and this is really the only saving grace for this particular issue. So again, another major misstep because of all the AVX bullshit. So this is, like I said, at best, another 2 out of 5. What was good, though, or the two things that were really good, I should say, from Marvel this week. First up is Ultimate Spider-Man number 11. This is basically an epic throwdown between Spidey, the Prowler, versus the Scorpion. And we have, David Marquez doing the art on this, does some great work here, illustrating, this fight and how it goes down. And, again, Bendis, just bringing his considerable talents to bear as far as, writing the dialogue for these characters. And, that's pretty much what this issue is. It's a big fight. And I don't have any problem with that, because it does show, basically for the first time, well, not for the first time, but in the first time of the eyes of the general public, that Spider-Man is indeed a badass. And of course, after the Scorpion is defeated by Spidey, Uncle Aaron wants to do it all again. And Miles says, no way. And of course, Aaron sends back a text saying, well, maybe I should just tell your dad. So then we leave it off there, but what we see after this little interlude, is we see that May Parker and Gwen Stacy have returned to New York. And they're calling Tony Stark, because they want to know, well, they want to meet. Or at the very least, May wants to meet the new Spider-Man. Now, this issue did give hints as to what's coming up in the Ultimate Universe, that there is indeed going to be, as I've been hoping for some time, a crossover between, at least just as far as an ad is concerned, a crossover between the three Ultimate books. So thank God they're finally on board with that idea. Because this is just, it's going way too all over the place with, everything that's going on in the Ultimates, with everything that's going on in Ultimate X-Men. Like I said, finally in the last issue of Ultimates, we got an idea of what else has been going on in the Ultimate Universe. So having these three books come together just seems like it's a smart move. It's a smart play to make. And then we have Winter Soldier number 6. Ultimate Spider-Man, 4 out of 5, very solid. Again, very well paced, good, really good issue, very tight, and really, of course, looking forward to seeing what happens next. Shit. And then we have, like I said, Winter Soldier number 6. We have Michael Lark on art, yay, because I love Michael Lark, and to me, even though I have come to actually kind of like the artwork that had been coming from, I believe, Breitweiser or one of the guys, either Butch or Jackson, kind of, I was liking their work, but I like Michael Lark's work a lot better. Basically, we find out this is the issue about the third sleeper. Because we found the other two sleepers before, and they've been put down. But here we have this third one named Leonid. And he was woken up in a somewhat shocking way by basically an earthquake went off where he was being held in a stasis tube, whatever. And we have, he awakens, he, crawls out from where he is, he's naked. And there's a police officer there, and he immediately kills the police officer, because that's his training, is to kill without hesitation, and basically sneaks off wearing the cop's uniform. And so this is, he's been awake, actually, for 12 years. He's just been entirely, completely off the grid. And we see how he spends the next 12 years basically just surviving by the skin of his teeth. But, he feels, he's compelled to read the classified section of the newspaper every day. And then about 3 months before this particular issue opens up, we find that the reason that he's been reading the classifieds is that there is a kind of protocol for what happens in this type of instance, which is the classified ad, is basically code. There is a classified ad that is basically code that will lead him to his control. And when Leonid meets his control, well, basically the control, they're fighting one war. Leonid is definitely fighting another, because this is all kind of taking place when, when Bucky was, when he was on trial for being the Winter Soldier, and then of course, basically being released in the United States, but then being found guilty in absentia back in Russia, and is sent back there, and of course, apparently dies fighting in Fear itself. So, and of course, we all know that was a big lie, and that his death has been covered up so that he can continue fighting the fight that he was fighting before, basically stopping whatever else, basically atoning for the sins, if you will, of the Winter Soldier. And now that he has the help of Natasha and people like Nick Fury and Jasper Sitwell, he has the resources to do it now. But we see that Leonid is definitely not just only unstable; he's quite evil, I think. because he does a very, very evil thing. And it was very sad, actually, for me, because this character that was just very recently introduced, or reintroduced, if you will, I really liked him, and to see Landon kill him as basically nothing other than a message to Bucky, it was pretty, honestly, it was pretty upsetting. So, but, you know, Brubaker, you know, he's doing such terrific stuff with this title. I mean, really, you know, milking it for all it's worth, you know, giving us the really good spy treatment. Now, this is not as good as some of the other stuff that he's done in the past. It's not even necessarily as good as the, you know, it's not as good as some of the Captain America stuff that he's done in the past, but it's still really damn good. So, I mean, and especially with him and Michael Lark, you know, working together again. So, I mean, this was, you know, a terrific issue, very solid 4.5 out of 5 for Winter Soldier number 6. So now on to the, there's a lot of stuff this week. Now on to the independents of this week. And first one that we're going to talk about is Harbinger, number 1. Now this is another one of the first issues of the new Valiant comics. This is written by Joshua Dysart with art by Kari Evans. And this is basically about a young man named Peter Stanchek, who is, he is a psychic, or is a telepath, if you will. And he has been institutionalized since he was a young boy because of his abilities. And there's a great cover, and if I could show it, I would show it. I don't want to get in trouble again with this channel. But basically we had, you know, he self-medicates with things like oxycodone and, you know, other, you know, kind of, not antipsychotics, but, you know, well, some are antipsychotics, to basically drown out all of the psychic, you know, noise in his head. He can't filter anything out, which I would assume is probably why he was committed in the first place, or at least one of the reasons. And he is, you know, and he's able to control the mind of the druggist that he gets all these drugs from, and then he pops his pills and the voices fade, because you can see all of the, you know, kind of thought balloons constantly surrounding him, and just all of these snippets of, you know, people's thoughts and everything like that. It's just cacophony of sound in his head. So that's how, you know, that's why he takes these meds to level out. And of course he's brought with his friend Joey, who is a paranoid schizophrenic, and he seems to actually enjoy his schizophrenia. And, you know, they kind of go, this is based in Pittsburgh, and they kind of go back to where Peter grew up, this neighborhood that Peter grew up in, mostly for the reason that Peter can see this girl Chris that he used to live next door to and that he grew up with, and, you know, essentially it was the only good thing in his life. Now, meanwhile, we have this man, Mr. Harada, who is a force of, you know, he's like a global entrepreneur, if you will. He's a very powerful man, but he has a secret of his own, is that he is like Peter. And, you know, basically, you know, what happens here is that Joey doesn't take his meds. He goes on a walk. He's, you know, arrested by the police, and then he's brought in for questioning. We have this man Tull, who was the man who had Peter and Joey in his institution, but it's not a public institution. It's a very, very private institution. And what the reason for this is, not quite sure. but it seems to very specifically have something to do with Peter. Peter, as we see again a little bit later in this issue, has basically committed, well, a form of mental rape, if you will, because he commands this girl that he's in love with to fall in love with him. And he kind of wakes up in the middle of the night, and after he, one would assume, has had sex with this girl, Chris, and he is met by Harada, who is taken kind of mental control, or just basically he has found a way into Peter's mind, and basically he's telling them, he's telling him about who Tull is and how that he is a dangerous man, but that Peter's powers are much more significant and much more meaningful than just using them to to steal drugs and get girls to sleep with them. So it's and what basically this is not Harada basically convincing Peter that he's that underneath all this he's a good guy, because Harada understands that he is this guy, that Peter is a total and absolute asshole, and he this is the intervention for him. Basically it's time to stop using people, it's time to stop self-medicating, it's time to stop with all the bullshit that you've been doing, and wake up and take heed of your powers. So, and of course they awaken to find out that Joey has been released, and Tull's people have followed Joey back to where Peter is, and that's where the issue leaves off. Now, I was very stunned throughout this issue that, well, first of all, I really liked conceptually where they were going with this, but what I was stunned with is that how incredibly unlikable this protagonist is, or who we would assume would be our protagonist. Now, again, this may be, I don't know if this is something that's kind of another reboot, like like Valiant's, like Exo Man of War is, or if it's just a new comic. If it's a new comic, then if he was if he's kind of a scumbag who continues, who wakes up and starts not being a scumbag, then that might be a little kind of a turnoff for this title for me. But if he's just kind of a bastard that continues on being a bastard, but with more intense psychic abilities, I'm actually looking more forward to that kind of storytelling. So I think there's a good amount of promise for this series. So I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the read. I enjoyed the fact that it was, this is not, a crystal clear hero at the outset. Even if it does go the route of a hero, it may still be an interesting read, but I would actually prefer it if he kind of stays kind of a dick. So I would give this a 4 out of 5. It's, like I said, it's a solid beginning. There's obviously a lot of places where it can go right and a lot of places it can go wrong. And moving on, continuing along those lines of Valiance, we will talk about Exo Man of War number 2. I'm really, really loving the hell out of this comic. Well, okay, love is maybe a strong word. I'm liking the hell out of this comic. This is a real eye-opener to me, because I was having a conversation with one of my buddies from the comic book store who did read Exo Man of War when it was first out in like the early 90s or whatever the hell it was. I remember there being an Iron Man Exo Man of War video game for, I think, Sega or something like that. But I never knew or cared who the character was. I just knew it was, the Iron Man was in it. So, basically, apparently that followed similar lines to this, but it seems to have the storytelling of Robert Vanetti and the great art by Carrie Nord is just or Vendetti and Carrie Ward or Carrie Nord. Just amazing art. I love the art in this book. But basically, we have Eric of the Visigoths. He has kind of a flashback to a moment that he has with his wife that he's still searching for. That he believes, of course, it was captured by these Romans, but it's these aliens. Apparently, they call themselves the Vine. Whether that's correct or not, but they seem to kind of, have a great affinity or almost a worshipfulness of plant life, worshipfulness. But they seem to kind of worship plants. Maybe that's why they call themselves the Vine. I don't know. But apparently he's been on their ship. Well, as it starts, you kind of see the labor that they do and so on and so forth, working compost heaps and everything like that, and gardening and kind of farming and, essentially being slaves once again. And, not too long into the issue, we find out that they've now been there for many years. However long it is, we don't exactly know, but maybe 2 or 3, not many years, but definitely, because it does say years later. However many years, we don't know. But basically, they finally have the strength or the resolve, I should say, not necessarily the strength, but definitely the resolve to basically, die on their feet rather than live on their knees anymore. And so Eric leads this, this petty band of rebels fighting out of the cages that they're held in, and rather cleverly, I might add. But I mean, being amongst these aliens for years, they must have picked up something or other. I was kind of hoping that they would pick up maybe a little bit of their language or something like that by now, or vice versa, but apparently they haven't. And that's the one thing about this issue that kind of rang a little false to me. It's like, I figured that one or the other would at least kind of, figure something out here. But regardless, so they lead, and Eric leads his rebellion through to the armory, and they kind of cut down all that are in their path, losing some of their own on the way, of course, until they get to the the sacred armor of Shanhara. And and one of the aliens, Commander Krill, I believe it was, says that the priest. This is basically the whole kind of the Shamara armor is just kind of like a fairy tale. It's just something that the priests kind of use to keep everybody kind of up in arms. And of course the the armor opens up and surrounds Eric, and at first, of course, it seems to have killed him. Not so. This is just it's a terrific read. I mean, just moments where these smaller moments. I mean, it's a really well-paced book. You really get a really good feeling about what's coming up. They seem to kind of brush over a lot of things in this issue, kind of skipping ahead several years just to kind of get to the point where where he gets the armor. So hopefully, from here we'll have, even more information about what exactly is going on, how many years have gone by, will he find his wife, so on and so forth. But this is just, it's been just really terrific read. And again, very easy 4.5 out of 5 for X-O Manowar #2. And God, that Carrie Nord art is just gorgeous. Thief of Thieves #5. So basically, we have at the beginning we have Redmond and James, partner, brother of his wife. They're surrounded by our female cop, and they have to deliver these goods, or else they're as good as dead, and possibly, James's, and possibly Redmond's wife too, even though she's not part of this job, because apparently the people that they're working for, as far as this job is concerned, they are relentless, and they will stop at nothing. Even if it means taking down the thieves themselves. So James runs out to basically allow for Redmond to escape with his, with his life, in order to protect his sister and, what will of course be his nephew. One day, James runs out and dies in a blaze of glory. And there's a great line, what's the best thing that you can steal? That James has, as he's running out to meet his fate, and he says, "One last breath." And so basically, then we come into the present, in which Redmond asks, his sexy little assistant Celia to gather a lot of the old crew, if you will. And it's like these 6, not quite master criminals, but definitely good criminals on their own, good thieves, to do a job that will net them something in the area of $7+ million that they'll be able to split amongst themselves. And of course, each particular thief, is all just part. They don't do very well on their own, in the sense that they're kind of always needing to be. They need to be part of a unit, a kind of Ocean's 11 maybe, in order to pull off a great heist. But this assemblage might just be a ruse by Redmond himself, because he meets with our female cop, and he puts it to her that if he can give her information about a heist that's about to go down, in which all these thieves are going to be going after this, $7+ million, these goods that amount to $7+ million, that if that bust were to go down, of course he's still, vehemently refusing that he is Redmond, but if he, but as a private citizen, he's learned certain things, and if he can get these people locked up, if basically that will buy his son Augustus his freedom. And that's where we leave off. So I mean, we have Redmond. Conceivably, we don't know where this is going. We have no idea where this is going, because this could be going in a couple of different directions. This could be Redmond trying to pull off essentially another, kind of great final heist type of idea, something like that, in which he can assemble this team and kind of con everybody, the cop especially, so that he can, that these partners can keep the goods and get his son free, or that he is just actually willing to assemble these people just to sell them out. So from a storytelling standpoint, obviously we have, I think we have kind of met everything that we need to, because as I've said before, and as in the letter column actually for this particular issue comments on, at least, there are kind of feelings of a bit of an Ocean's 11 kind of feel to it. There's also And that becomes very apparent in this issue. And like I've said before, it has a very kind of out of sight feel to it as well. And so I think that we've kind of set that, yeah, this kind of actually takes place somewhere within those two ideas of these two kind of famous films, slash books. And it's kind of taking those concepts and turning them on their ear. So in that respect, I have to salute Kirkman and Nick Spencer for what they're doing. And of course, Sean Marlborough's art is really, really good, very moody here. And it's just, this book seems to be, this wasn't a particularly great issue because there's a lot of, this seems to be very short. And as I think we all know already, people who are reading this book, that this book is headed to AMC, like The Walking Dead, and it will eventually become a television program. Of course, there are certain bits of salty language that will have to be cut out, but other than that, there's no really extreme violence or anything like that, or, TNA that would have to be excised. So that's pretty easy to work around. But, it's better than it was, and but this isn't as good as a couple of the recent issues have been. So this very solid 4 out of 5, though. I said I like this direction that they're going in. I just felt this issue seemed very brief, and there could have been some more going on here. Hellraiser number 14. Now this is basically, we have Elliot Spencer kind of revealing his endgame, that that he is essentially he's kind of becoming immortal, and he is kind of freeing these souls of these damned souls to kind of basically take over the world. And he seems to be well on his way to doing that. But of course, Kirsty and her friends, they have a new ally in the Cenobite that was betrayed also by Spencer. And they're kind of running all around Leviathan, trying to get to where Kirsty has been keeping her the Le Marchand configuration, the Lament configuration box that she has kept, that will basically allow them into Earth so that they can stop Spencer's plans. But what the great thing is here is that this is yet another great example of how Clive Barker can cross over his universes. Because we were introduced to a character before in this, which is a character from, well, first originally from the book from the short story The Last Illusion, that was also printed with the novel Cabal, which is one of my favorite. It's probably maybe my second favorite short story by Clive, because there are so many great short stories of his, but I loved The Last Illusion. It's just absolutely brilliant. There's that, and there's Dread from the Books of Blood, which I think are my favorites. But it was absolutely, to have the character of Harry D'Amour, who we saw, if you have ever watched the film Lord of Illusions, is a terrible film. And it made even more sad by the fact that Clive himself directed it, because he doesn't know how to direct his own goddamn work. I mean, this is a guy who's basically been given license to write and direct his own adaptations of his own novels, and his movies suck. With the exception of Hellbound Hellraiser 2, which I think is actually really good. But as far as this is concerned, but as far as this book is concerned, this is really pure Clive, and we see Harry D'Amour again basically saying that this, because Harry D'Amour also appeaed in the sequel to The Great and Secret Show, or Everville, or as also is known, the second book of the art. And Everville is very much my favorite of Clive's books. And because I love Clive Barker. I love his stuff. It just appeals to me on just about every single level. And there are a couple of his books I couldn't make it all the way through. Magica, it was too dense, I felt. And there was another book of his that I haven't read. I didn't read like Abarat or anything like that, or The Thief of Always, just because that I like his more precisely adult stuff. That stuff gets to me more. So, the fact that Harry D'Amour has been, he's like the constant now in Clive's universe. He's always around whenever the shit's going down. So, that's, to me, is really cool. So, this was a solid 3.5, leading more towards 4 out of 5, because, just from the standpoint of everything that this book does, as far as, just artistically, from, a plot standpoint, the art in it is terrific, really, horrific stuff. Just really good, really well done stuff. Secret, number 2. For those of you who watched Ghost Critics' review last week, my feeling and his feeling are very, very similar. And Comic Noob, I don't know if... I haven't actually watched your video yet, I'm sorry. I'm behind on that, and I mean to catch up. But I know that you tweeted something about this book that basically it very much mirrored my own thoughts on this book. That this is a book that you need to go back to the first issue and read what's going on there, because I don't know what the hell is going on in this book. I really don't. I couldn't figure it out for the life of me. I understand, okay, that there's, that we have, Mr. Miller, that he is kind of double dealing, that, we have this really excellent opening with these two children and their father, and the father comes in and, they talk about Prometheus, and, basically he's telling them how he's, these two children, they've done something, they've stolen something. And it's taken a lot of work for the father, who seems to be something of a criminal himself, has tried to instill into the children not, it's basically taken a lot of effort to get it all covered up. And possibly a lot of money as well. So he asked the children to, he has this, kind of like hunter's Rambo knife type of thing, and he asked the children to, these two children, can't be much older than 10 or 11 years old, to put their hands on the table. And and he asks the children, what is the lesson that you've learned here today? And the one child puts his hand on the table and he says, "Don't steal." And the father plunges the knife all the way through the table, hacking off one of the children's fingers. And then that's not the lesson. The lesson is not to not steal, but don't get caught. And so then we have this kind of back and forth intrigue with our supposed protagonist. He's basically being served with divorce papers, and he's being told that his all these things that are going wrong. Basically, just the mysteries, the murders, the differences between friend and foe, these lines that are beginning to blur and become, less out of focus, are it's not coalescing, but it's not coalescing in a good way. And I'll explain what I mean by that. The title of this book is called Secret. Jonathan Hickman is not a stupid man. He's not a lowest common denominator writer, and he never will be. But every once in a while, I think that what he's done with this book is that he has gone beyond just giving us a very linear story that has, where everything is really laid out for you, and is giving us a book essentially filled with secrets that is maybe even meant to be a secret from the audience. Now, I realize that perhaps I may be reading too much into this, maybe want to like it more than it actually is supposed to be liked, or that it's worth liking. Maybe I'm just rooting for Hickman and his independent stuff in a big way, but I did kind of like the vibe that this book was throwing off. And, Bodenheim's art is really good. I like the use of the kind of just, swatches of color, from frame to frame, it being in black and white, or being completely in yellow, or being almost completely in red, or being almost completely in green. It has some significance that I'm sure that will pay off at some point in time in, one of our future issues. And I'm on board, man. But admittedly, because I couldn't really figure out what the fuck was going on here, I do have to, in all faith, I have to give this at best about a 3.5 out of 5, because I did want to understand it more, and I would think that the author would want the readers to understand it more. But like I said, there could be a bigger end game at work for Hickman here. So, and maybe that's something that we'll, and hopefully that's something that we're going to find out within the next couple of issues. And we will find out more about what exactly is going on. The Spider, number 2. David Liss, Colton Worley, just, again, they're knocking this book out of the park, too. It's another great piece of pulpy fun from Dynamite Comics. Really loving the vibe that this book is throwing off. Because we have, basically in this issue, we see kind of the origins of, we see the Spider as he confronts Anput and Anput's foot soldiers, if you will, these kind of zombified people that, that perhaps there is a cure for. So, the Spider can't just, use the twin guns on them. And so we see, some more of, Spider's arsenal being used, kind of this web kind of netting that he can use to, not only kind of save himself from an exploding building, because that's exactly what happens here, is that Anput, means to just, to blow up this building, or at least part of this building, of the MetroCorp building. And in order to get thin kind of, like Wall Street, like kind of, masters of the universe out of their offices, in order to get them out of the building, he actually blows off 2 of the fingers of one of the guys, of one of these night traders, or whatever the hell they call themselves. So I just, it's a good example of, this is a guy who will do pretty much just about anything to, to save somebody, even if it means hurting them pretty bad. So I thought that was a kind of a fun moment. But we have the origins here of Anput. Basically, that we see that she is from the Middle East. Whether or not she is in fact Egyptian, well, no, she's in Cairo, when her story starts, which is about 15 years ago. And we see her father has been killed in what was thought to be was basically a victim of mistaken identity. That somebody thought that he was a terrorist and they killed him. Of course, the mother and the child and this little girl are being told, yes, you're going to be compensated, so on and so forth. They get to America, where the mother believes, this is going to be the land of opportunity and everything like that, everything that's supposed to be, in the brochures. And then a year later, after that, we see that the mother is dying, and the doctor is chewing them out for the way that you people take care of yourselves and everything like that, and why didn't you come in sooner? And basically she says, you're the ones that kicked us out of here, and you're accusing us of negligence because my mother didn't have insurance. And so it's basically the story of how this girl has basically been put down every year of her life pretty much, until she finally sinks so low that she had actually become a prostitute. And the kind of Egyptian-seeming bodyguard of her pimp basically decides that it's time to liberate themselves and throws them out a window. So Anput and her bodyguard, not lover, but definitely someone who obviously cares for her, they train together, they work together, they see whatever they can do to make sure that they never have to bring themselves so low again. But, and they seek to purge, just like the spider does. They say that they have a lot in common. They seek to purge this city of its scum. But Anput obviously has much different methods, in basically kind of zombifying all of these people. And we just, we have all of these great characters that make up this, with Richard Wentworth, and with Ram Singh, and everybody, just all these great characters that that very much have homes in the pulps of the 30s, late 20s and 30s, but also work in modern times. And obviously this comic book is great proof of that. So this was, again, a terrific read, great cliffhanger at the end. So a very, very solid 4.5 out of 5 for this week's, or for the Spider #2. So on to DC. First we're going to talk Animal Man #10. Basically what we have here is that Constantine, Madame Xanadu, and Zatanna are all there talking with Mrs. Baker about everything that Maxine and Buddy are looking forward to. Is that Madame Xanadu has basically had a very similar premonition to what we saw in Animal Man Annual, and that the future is basically the rot wins, and that all that's left is her and Maxine, and the mother is the reason for this loss. But what we also see at the same time, of course, is that Butter Baker, because I love the goat shepherd, how he keeps calling him Butter Baker. And we see Buddy in the red fighting off the elements of the rot that have risen up, because the balance, again, harkening back to the annual, has been offset between the green, the red, and the rot. And so we have the kind of fighting their way towards the kind of the figureheads of the red, kind of the parliament of trees of the red, if you will. But they're of course these these kind of animal figureheads rather than, you know, trees. So what basically Buddy is demanding of them is that they return him to his body so that he can, you know, continue to fight the rot and protect his family. But they can't do that because one of the Hunters 3 has taken over Buddy's body. And he learns that in this issue also that we see that Cliff, his son, has been corrupted by the rot as well. So he demands they get him up there, but they have no body to put him in. So they're looking to then forge a new body for Animal Man. And of course Constantine makes another reference to the green guy, which Mrs. Baker is, you know, assuming that he means Swamp Thing, but it's not. And we see a little bit maybe of a hint of who the big green guy is in the final pages of this book. And this was, again, a strong read, a good read, not great though. Wasn't nearly as big of a fan of this issue as I was the annual. I'm still, you know, Steve Pugh's art still not, you know, especially when it comes to the moments with Zatanna and Xanadu and Constantine, a little bit off. Seems a little bit off. But it's still, I'm getting used to it. But this, you know, I felt that Lemire was just a little bit off. There was a little bit too much talky talk and not enough walky walk. So, not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but it just felt a little bit too expositionary. So this gets a very solid 4 out of 5. So I mean, like I said, it's really good. It's just not as good as I want this book to be. Batwing number 10. This was basically, we're no longer dealing with the Court of Owls here, because that's coming to an end with Batman number 10, assuming, or maybe Batman number 9. I'm not sure yet. But do we have? Oh no, I'm sorry, Batman number 10. Because Snyder is going to be doing a book called Talon, which is going to be about the Court of Owls. He's not writing it; he is plotting it, and I believe that James Tynion, who co-wrote and did the art for Batman Annual, is going to be writing it along with somebody else, but I can't remember who exactly it was. So that's one of the kind of third wave of New 52s that are coming out, and really looking forward to that. So basically, we're back in Tunisia, and basically Batwing is after this group of pirates calling themselves the Jackals, and obviously he's amped up his suit a great deal, so he's able to survive a pretty strong onslaught from these guys. But he sees this one guy that they're keeping on their ship, and one of the pirates is communicating with somebody back in Gotham City, and this person back in Gotham City blows the ship up after he sees this guy, this Chinese man. And what we find out later is through the technology that Batwing uses, that this man is actually a nuclear physicist, a nuclear scientist. But what these people wanted with a man like him, nobody really knows. And then we have this other story about the governor of Nigeria, or the Nigerian governor, excuse me, because the country itself is just Niger. And he is having this birthday party, and he's a tremendously corrupt human being, this governor is. But this vehicle rams the gate of the governor's mansion in the midst of this child's birthday party, and it explodes. It blows up the entire compound, and one would have to assume everybody's dead. And what we find out is that somehow this has something to do with the family of Matu, which is kind of the Alfred to David's Batwing. So we don't really know what's going on there, but what we have here is that Wings, Knight, and Bat are in China at the moment, going over this scientist's home, kind of with a fine-tooth comb, and they come up against this other kind of hood who can apparently turn into a dragon. And we also find out who the villain is back in Gotham City that seems to be kind of running the Jackals. And if that doesn't give you a hint as to who it is, I don't know what will. Again, Winnick doing a very solid issue. Marcus Toad doing a really, really good job on art. Very solid 4 out of 5 for Batwing number 10. Really, really liking this book. Really liking the places that it's going. Earth 2, number 2. The big controversial issue that the whole fucking world has been bitching about because, oh, gay Green Lantern, gay Green Lantern. Shut the fuck up, you lame-ass fucking jerks. Anyway, so we have Mr. Terrific, now that his own title is ending. He pops into Earth 2, and he comes up against Earth 2's smartest man on Earth. And this guy, he is something of a bastard, and basically uses Mr. Terrific's own, his T-spheres against him to make him submit, because he has plans for this Earth, this madman. But we also, more importantly, we get Jay Garrick becoming the Flash, as Mercury basically bestows the last of his power to, in his dying throes to Jay Garrick, basically saying, you are, you're better than just being average. You're better than who you are, and this will allow you to meet your full potential. And so he does a lot with experimenting with his speed, runs real fast, and he saves a couple of apocalypse, which to me is just kind of a funny concept in and of itself. But and he's just running faster and faster and faster, and then he finds himself in Poland, and pretty far away from the U.S. That's how fast he's run, and in just a matter of seconds, really. And he finds himself up against Hawkgirl, maybe? At least that seems to be who it seems to be. And then, of course, we have Alan and his boyfriend Sam traveling by train. They're going to have kind of a romantic interlude. There's the gay kiss. Ooh, so scary, so threatening to our children, and liberal gay media trying to infect our fuck off. Anyway, I'm still really incensed about this whole thing. But Alan is about to propose to Sam. They get married, but that is rather violently interrupted. And so we get a tease that next issue is we're going to have Green Lantern appearing. just as we were teased in the first issue that we would have the Flash. So James Robinson doing a really good job with writing this. I mean, handles this issue with, there's no grand fervor about this. They're not trying to make a real issue out of it. It's just that, okay, I mean, yes, they have made an issue out of it, but within the context of the issue itself, Alan Scott being gay is nothing. It's just he's a man who's in love. Happens to be another man that he's in love with. Who cares? Yes, this could, you know, the more cynical part of me says, yeah, this is kind of a cash grab, or not cash grab really, but, you know, I can't even really honestly say that, because I don't think that's really the case here. I think that they wanted to have a diverse character, you know, because I mean it's, you know, generally not a very diverse world as far as comic books are concerned, because we have a good deal of white males and white females that are, you know, heterosexual. So, but we have, you know, we have blacks, we have Asians, we have, we have gays, we have straights, we have bis. I mean, you know, we have people from all walks of life. Why shouldn't they be in more comics? So, but this is, you know, it's a smartly written issue. Nicola Scott doing a fantastic job on art. Again, very solid 4 out of 5 to Earth 2 number 2. I'm very excited to see where this series is going to go. Ultimately, it's going to go to the JSA, and I'm looking forward to getting there. So now we get on to the other big release of this week, and that is, and I'm not scared to show this because I guess there's no real big deal about this, but we have here, and this of course leading into Before Watchmen, Minutemen number 1. Now this of course is, you know, a copy of the New Frontiersman, of course the right-wing paper that Rorschach collected, or that he read. We have a, you know, nice here, it's a little ad for Nostalgia by Byte. And you know, submissions for essays, 1,000 words or less, to you know, to the New Frontiersman. Of course, it has an ad for or the anniversary of the release of Under the Hood by Hollis Mason. And then of course there's the, you know, QR code or whatever the hell, I don't know what it is, and I don't really care. I didn't honestly read this part of it, but I intend to, because I'm sure that, because on the back it's just an ad, of course, for all the different books, and I can tell you right off the bat which books I will not be getting. I will not be getting Night Owl. That's an absolute. Even though I love the character of Night Owl, I won't be getting it because it's written by J. Michael Straczynski, and I have no love for anything that Straczynski does. I have no real interest in picking up Ozymandias. I have really no... the only reason that I would like to read an issue of Dr. Manhattan is because of Adam Hughes' art, because I love Adam Hughes, great artist. I will probably be picking up Rorschach. I will probably be picking up Silk Spectre, and I'll probably be picking up The Comedian. But as far as anything else, yeah, those are all out. But of course, what is definitely in is Minutemen. Now this is Darwin Cook. Darwin Cook, the amazing writer-artist that he is, gives us a really wonderful piece of comic work here, regardless of its attachment to Watchmen. You know, because we have to be perfectly honest, I would have preferred, I'm not going to get too much into a review of this, but I would have preferred that this be a little bit more kind of lighthearted, and it is, definitely, in places. But you see how that Cook himself has taken it upon himself to kind of not necessarily ape the style in which Moore wrote Watchmen, because there is definitely some comparison here, but you know, just in the way that certain things are framed. But you know, we have, you know, kind of the you know, the beginnings of the Minutemen, how they all come together, a little bit of you know, how this all plays out, you know, how they get together and who they are individually. And you know, we have you know, the book, of course, focusing around Hollis Mason, original Night Owl, and him in the kind of writing process of Under the Hood. And you know, we get a look into, you know, Sally Jupiter and how she kind of came to be, and basically she was, you know, she was kind of a fake crime fighter, basically doing it for the publicity, because you know, Larry Schexnayder, who was, you know, her manager and ultimately who Laurie thinks is her father, until of course she discovers the truth, that the comedian has been her father all along. You know, he basically stages these fake robberies, pays off the police, just so that she can get these great photo ops and kind of make out like she is she's a crime fighter. And of course we have, you know, Hollis, we have, you know, the first time that he came across Hooded Justice, and you know, how incredibly frightening Hooded Justice truly is. And you know, and how he, you know, basically he was just kind of a beat cop in 1939 when he first met the or first saw Hooded Justice. So he felt, you know, he was inspired by these mystery men, if you will, to don his own costume and fight crime in his own way. And you know, like I said, there are definitely some lighthearted elements, particularly in Night Owl's own story, and maybe that's because, and also, you know, there's, you know, kind of this light running, you know, above, and then there's kind of like the darkness that runs below. Now, the Night Owl tale is kind of the most kind of cheerful and bright. You know, the ones about, you know, Mothman, Byron Lewis, because we know that of course he ends up being a total lunatic. You know, he completely loses his mind. We see how, you know, he starts out in, you know, Dollar Bill. But to me, the most interesting character in this entire book is not Captain Metropolis or Dollar Bill or Mothman or, you know, Sally Jupiter or, you know, even the comedian, which has very much, I think, the kind of the darkest introduction to his character. But we do see, you know, obviously his very sick sense of humor. But the characters that I do definitely want to learn more about are that of Silhouette and of Hooded Justice. Silhouette being kind of my main focus, because her introduction here is the most exciting. It's the most pleasing to see. And I gotta say, I really, really enjoyed this issue from front to back. Like I said, regardless of the fact that, you know, some people, you know, Ghost Critic, you know what I'm talking about. Some people have banned it, you know, or kind of boycotting it from their store because that's how strongly they feel about Watchmen. Now, obviously, in Ghost Critic's case, if you don't watch his channel, I'm sure most of you do, though, because you should. But, you know, that guy's a personal friend of Alan Moore, So I can see how that, kind of solidarity would affect sales, or would affect that guy choosing to sell or not sell before Watchmen in his shops. But this is honestly, it's too well constructed and too good of a book to just kind of ignore and just say, well, it doesn't exist, doesn't exist, doesn't exist. I'm not looking, not looking, not looking, even though it's right there. It's just, it's kind of like, somebody going like, blah, 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 blah. That's kind of the comparison that I make to, a lot of people who are just so dead set against this. I'm not buying a single issue. It's sacrilege. It's desecrating this great work. And I don't know, in the future that may turn out to be true. But for right now, Minutemen #1 is a terrific piece of comic art. Solid 4.5 out of 5 for Minutemen #1. Real quick, I did forgot to go over this. Smallville, Season 11, #2. So basically in this book, we've got, again, more information about, Lex Luthor, and basically that, he has, the neurotoxin that he was given to make him forget everything in the finale of the series. Right after he kills Tess. And, of course, her ghost seems to be haunting him, but she's not a ghost, and not even sure if she's she's a hallucination. I do like the fact that Lex Luthor does, his kind of his kind of underling is named Otis, being a nod to the Superman film universe. Of course, played by Ned Beatty in the first 2 films. I don't know if he ever came back. I do like the fact that Star Labs has this great statue of Virgil Swan, who's of course played by Christopher Reeve in the show. And we see Chloe, and we see Emil Hamilton, Dr. Emil Hamilton, for the first time again. We see Lois doing all of her stuff. We see, Superman doing kind of his thing, his investigation into this possible invasion from space. We have Lex wanting to launch this Guardian defense platform, and the person that is going to be piloting this is Commander Hank Henshaw. Now, that to me was the kind of the coolest thing about this book. That we have Hank Henshaw, who, of course, knowing Superman, this is a man that ends up becoming Cyborg Superman. And, so we have hints of how that might come to be. And, there's just, like I said, there's a lot going on here. It's a terrific issue. That's that this whole thing is essentially just kind of a ruse, a very expensive ruse set up by Lex. And we have, of course, the great interplay between Lois and Clark, and with Chloe and with Chloe and Oliver, and with Chloe and Clark, and then Oliver and Lex have a scene together. And it obviously brings back the fondest possible memories of the series. Brian Q. Miller obviously being a writer for the series. Now this is another digital downloadable comic, but here it is in print form. I'd rather not read it on the net on the computer if I don't have to. Although there is some benefit to that sometimes, and maybe that'll be something I get into later, because I know that we're running long. So I'm gonna wrap things up pretty quickly with my picks of the week. Here is another download, but not something that is in print form, at least not yet, and that is Legends of the Dark Knight #1. Now, this was written by Damon Lindelof, who, of course, co-creator of Lost, co-writer of Prometheus, now out in theaters, which I have not seen yet. I'm going to be seeing it this Saturday. I've heard, kind of, even those on the good side have been kind of mixed, but I'm really looking forward to seeing it. But basically, and we have Jeff Lemire on art. Kind of surprising, because there's always to me this disconnect that that comic book authors can draw too, and Jeff Lemire actually does. I mean, it's not great art by any stretch of the imagination, but it's actually this really nice kind of independent art. And basically what this is basically Damon Lindelof kind of going back to the kind of Legends of the Dark Knight format from when that book first came out back in, I think, 1990 or whatever it was, because it was so big, because it was the first new Batman series in like 30 years or something like that. And so this is going into Batman's past. And this book basically is about Batman and the beginnings of his career, and how he kind of he's really kind of holding himself up to a different degree of kind of superhero-ness than some of his fellow compatriots like Green Lantern and Superman. They have vulnerabilities, like kryptonite or like the color yellow. And Bruce essentially is making this point to Alfred that he's better than them, he's superior to them because he has no vulnerabilities. Well, Alfred takes it upon himself to teach Bruce a very harsh lesson. I won't get too into it because I do think that this is something that you really should read. Get the download because it's worth it. This is a terrific read. I loved Lemire's art style. I loved the way that it was written. It's a terrific story. It had a lot of great kind of emotional punch to it. It does have this sense of this very kind of father-son relationship between Bruce and Alfred in absentia, obviously. But it was terrific. I was totally surprised by it. But it seemingly came out of nowhere. I had no idea that it was coming out, and then all of a sudden, on Twitter, people are talking about it, and it's like, okay, I should really take a look at this because people are just really talking it up. And it was terrific. It was really, really, really good. So this was a very solid 5 out of 5 for the online Legends of the Dark Knight #1. Now on to the books of the week. I'm still on books of the week, so let me continue, because that was definitely one of the books of the week. It's a very solid 5 out of 5. Swamp Thing, #10. Here we have Scott Snyder and Francesco Francavilla. Grazie, mi amico, for drawing such a beautiful comic. And again, to Scott Snyder for writing such a terrific comic. Basically, this is the aftermath of everything that's just gone down with Lord Seth, or Seth, or whatever. And this is completely told, almost completely, from the point of view of Anton Arcane. It's the very first big bad, if you will, of Swamp Thing. And we basically we see him speaking to somebody, and we see Anton Arcane speaking to someone that he's about to kill. And he's telling him the story of how special Abigail Arcane truly is. That she is extremely special because of her connection to the Rot. And that was first displayed when she was just a baby. And we see this very, very disturbing panel page of baby Abigail with a rattle, maybe, you know, month or two old, something like that, and she is in the arms of her rotting, dead mother, and that Abigail connected to the rot within her own mother and killed her. Of course, you know, obviously not knowing what she had done. She was, you know, she's not even an infant. She's just the tiniest little baby. So I mean, it's this horrifying image of this beautiful child kind of being nestled by this corpse, this rotting corpse of her mother. And so we see basically Abby and Alec going back to kind of the, I don't know, ancestral home of the Arcanes, if you will, back in the swamp. And basically, you know, Alec says to Abby, you know, I have to replenish my strength. And for that time, I won't be able to protect you. And she basically tells him not to worry, that she'll be fine. She can take care of herself. As we get further into the book, we finally find out who Anton's been talking to. And the end of the book itself is pretty devastating. We have some beings, unmen, that I'm assuming are from the original Len Wein, Bernie Wrightson run, which I am sorry to say I'm not that familiar with, because I really only read the Moore stuff. And but this was just awesome. I read somewhere, someone who was giving a review of this had said that, you know, Francovilla's art in this issue is kind of like, it's like if Edgar Allan Poe was an artist. That's the kind of art that he would create. And I thought that was such an amazing observation. And when I thought about it, I thought it really does seem true, especially working within this horror comic. Just fantastic. 5 out of 5 for Swamp Thing number 10. And now on to the book of the week. I know we're closing in on 2 hours here. If you've been with me for this long, I thank you. But here it is, Morning Glories number 19. It's basically the story of Hunter as his would-be paramour is lying dead in the woods, victim of Zoe killing her. And as Hunter races through the woods to escape his death, as Zoe chases after him, we get flashbacks of Hunter's past. As Hunter visits his mother, who is dying of cancer. And as he visits her and sits by her side, and basically we see Hunter with his mother as they discuss him submitting his application to Morning Glories Academy. And he goes on and on about how he's not good enough, how he's not special enough to apply to this to such a prestigious school, and his mother tells him that he is definitely good enough. And he sits with her, and he holds her hand, and he says, "I will apply tomorrow," because Hunter he's always late, and we get to a moment that flashes back and forward between Hunter running and Hunter with his mother, and they sit together, and he holds her hand, and he turns on the TV, and there's kind of a banal talk show on, and the woman on the talk show stops talking to the host of the talk show and turns towards the camera and says, "It's time to stop running." And at that moment, Hunter's mother flatlines. And very shortly after that, as the pursuit continues in the woods, we go back to Hunter visiting his mother's grave, again apologizing for being late. And he has his acceptance letter that he wanted to give her. And from there we go, we go to the present, where Hunter confronts Zoe, or Zoe confronts Hunter, because he's run out of room. He is literally at the precipice, at a cliff, and either way is certain death. Something very, very unexpected happens. I won't give this story an absolute perfect 5 out of 5 because of my emotional connection to it. There were a lot of times in my own life I felt very similarly to Hunter, and I actually I was flunking out of my high school, out of my public high school, and my mother championed the cause for me to attend a very prestigious private art school, and borrowed money from my aunt so that I could go. And I was accepted to that school. This was beyond words for me. When I look back at this year in comics, this is going to be one of my favorite issues of any comic of the year. I want to thank Nick Spencer and Joe Eisman for creating such an incredible comic that gives such an incredibly unique voice And I know that there's more questions to be answered. I know that there's still a lot left to go. But goddamn, if this issue isn't beyond perfect. And I'm sorry that I'm a little bit emotional about this issue. Not without good reason. I've been talking for 2 hours now. If you've been listening for me for this whole time, God fucking bless you. You are far better person than I, probably. But there's a lot of comic books to cover. I might end up divvying this into 2 sections. We're probably not going to get it then until Wednesday, then at the earliest. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this up, warts and all. 2 hour plus now that we're getting into. And if you can't get through past the first hour, whatever, I understand. Let me know. I'll divvy it up. If, of course, you won't have gotten to that, but I'll just put a little note in the video. And like I said, if you've been with me for this long, thank you for sticking around. I promise it won't be this long next time, because there was just so much to catch up on and so much to talk about. I miss you, Mom. If it's your first time here, you're essentially have just watched a film. So if you're brave enough to subscribe, God bless you. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you know, it's at Donnelly92274. Of course, the shadowgallerycomics.tumblr.com. I put a lot of reviews up there. I've been reviewing some of the first volumes of the trades from the New 52 that have just come out. I know some of you like to read what I have to say about comics sometimes as well, so that's there. I review a lot of films as well. So please come check it out. Love to have you. So this is me, James Donnelly, saying goodnight from the Shadow Gallery. This time, it's okay to stay in the light every once in a while. Thanks again.